Morning
Good morning.
or good
Can you hear
afternoon,
me?
I should say. Yeah, let me turn this down just a little bit. All right, let me put I thought I had my camera on. Sorry.
It's okay.
It'll be coming up shortly, I think.
Okay, no problem.
Let's go.
Okay, so whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of tell us more about, where you're from and yeah, what you do.
Hi, okay. My name is Rhonda Chandler, and I am the founder of Lovin the Skin I'm in. And I currently live in De Pere, Wisconsin, which is like a suburb of Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the northeast Wisconsin area.
Okay, yes. And I wanted to say, yes, we found out about the work you were doing with your nonprofit organization called Loving the Skin You're In. And I came across your website, which is beautiful and wonderful. And it's all about, uplifting and empowering young Black women. And I wanted to first ask you if you could kind of just describe how it came into becoming the organization that it is today and kind of what led you to opening up this organization to so many young girls in your area.
Absolutely. So it started out of me needing to find a resource for my own daughters. We moved here from North Carolina. So when we got here, we quickly saw that there was no diversity whatsoever in our neighborhood, community, the schools. Kids didn't have teachers that looked like them, not a lot of peers. They were predominantly the only young African American female in class, or I also have a son. So they didn't get to see those adult role models. And then their peer relationships weren't the same as when we were back in North Carolina. So, and even our neighborhood, our jobs, predominantly Caucasian. So I noticed that there were a lot of incidents happening, or I later found out there were incidents happening with my daughters where, kids were making comments because of their hair texture, hairstyle, teachers commenting, like if it was hair wash day over the weekend or something at home. And if I changed my daughter's hairstyle, the teachers, would comment, have asked if that's her hair,
Mm.
different things like that. But the comments, it's pretty cruel comments made by kids. Teachers mixing my daughters up with maybe another student who was biracial. So the microaggressions, you name it, they kind of experienced it. So, my older daughter, we wore our hair natural when we were in North Carolina. And then when we came here, she was just always wanting to straighten her hair, and just like, well, I don't feel like having to explain to everybody, my natural hair, or once I wash my hair, why it goes back to its natural state, etc. So just to say the least, it was a pretty big adjustment. So I started like doing some research in the area. I'm a social worker also. So I started, looking for resources for my daughters to see if there were any type of programs that they could get involved with, so that they could have those individuals that look like them. And there wasn't anything in the immediate area. And then I started meeting other mothers who either lived here and were raising Black children, biracial daughters, or who were transplants like us and relocated here because of a job, and their daughters were having similar experiences. So I just, I had this was like kind of in the back of my mind, and I kind of attempted at one point a few years prior. But after all that was going on with my daughters, then I just started inviting the mothers and their daughters to my house. So that's really how it started, just to kind of build a community for them. And I was reading a devotional with some friends about building a community for them. So that's when I just said, you know what, how about y'all just start coming over to my house? Um, and we'll find things to do, but at least just giving the girls space, to be themselves and talk about whatever they were dealing with. So that's really how this all came about. um, was just unofficially, and for them to hang out in my basement.
Okay, yes. I think that is amazing what you are doing for, not only for your daughters, but for the community. I have experienced a lot of the things that you're talking about that you went through with your daughters. So like my heart goes out to them as well for, that they even had to go through that.
Mhm.
Because it is an experience that a lot of Black women face, as young girls, and trying to come into their own racial identity as their own, as a Black identity, have that own self-representation, and I think it's so important to have that representation at an early age and be able to find confidence in their own skin, in their own hair texture, and not have to, feel that microaggression or blatant racism
Mhm.
coming from community members, or even in the educational system from their teachers too. I think
Right.
it's important, to have those conversations, not just within our communities, but within the greater communities, and looking at the system that's in place that kind of, it triggers those conversations as well. But yeah, I remember growing up, and especially around like middle school, that's when, I kind of went from wearing braids and a lot in my hair, and then I started wearing my hair and straight, and like in blowouts and things like that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
people were like very surprised, and they try to like touch my hair,
Yep.
and they come up to me and they'd be like, "Are you mixed or something?" I was like, "Nope, I'm not at all,"
Right.
and it was just that having those conversations, and or
Mhm.
saying, you have such good hair. It's like, well, what is good hair?
Right.
What do you
When it's
define?
straight, it's good, or
Right.
yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
And is it so impossible or so, surprising that you can have very long, silky hair, very, healthy hair as a Black
Right.
woman? It's like, so it is, still mind blowing to me that these are things that are still occurring. But it
Mhm.
is important to talk about, because it is happening in a lot of communities. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I do think that it's great what you're doing. And and I kind of wanted to ask you too, kind of how you've seen the growth from, where your daughter was when she was put in those situations, and had those experiences to where she is now, coming into a space, like you said, where she feels welcomed and feels like it's inclusive, and feels like she can just be her natural self, and embrace her hair and her skin, and her beauty. How you've seen that transition as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so I feel like, not just for my daughter, but there's more confidence in the girls that first, started. When we started this in my basement, and then we were obviously virtual for meetings and that sort of thing, we will only have about 6 to 8 girls. But the past few times now that we've gotten back in person, we met in April for the first time in person since 2020, and then we just had a meeting this past Saturday, and our numbers have tripled with the amount of girls that are participating. And I mean, I know that's amazing to me, but I know there's so many more that we need to reach. But just in that time to see the numbers triple in this short period of time. But I think the girls, they have expressed to me that they are comfortable in wearing their natural hair. They don't feel that pressure to have to straighten their hair. And they also appreciate that they have their friends, they have their sisters that, they know they can talk to and share things with. They may not all go to the same school and may not be in the same classrooms, but they know that they have this friendship group that can support them and that can share similar situations. But I think being in an open space where nobody's judging you or looking at you, or you have to be careful what you say or how you say, or if they're talking about a particular subject in school, for example, in history, where there it seems to be the topic is always like slavery and not the positive examples of African Americans, or us being kings and queens and of royalty. So when those things, those conversations do happen in school, they get the looks like, so everybody wants to see what their comment is going to be. We're on the topic of slavery or whatever. So I think this gives them a space where it's just like a breather. They can just relax and, just really talk about what's on their mind and not feel prejudged, or, that they'll have those stereotypes placed on them.
Right. Yeah. It's like that connection piece of just being able to like come together and
Yep.
feel like you're,
Exactly.
welcome, and just feel like you have that support system. Is so, oh my gosh, it's so important
Yep.
to be able to, and to be able to confidently speak and have other people listening and feel like, you're being heard and your voice
Exactly.
matters is so important.
Yep. And
I think,
sometimes, they're doing activities like this past weekend, they were painting. So sometimes it's not always conversation, but just, it's like an unspoken connection also, they but they just had a good time. And we have been fortunate where we've had parents who are bringing their kids who live like 30 minutes or so away. So, they're recognizing, even in these smaller communities, their daughters need this resource, and they're willing to travel and come so that their daughters can make these connections.
Yeah, that is excellent. And I think you had said like it's kind of grown now from, I think you range from like 7 to 18 years old.
Correct. Yep. Age of 7 to 18 is, who we want to work with, who's been participating. And, I've said to the parents, where the younger kids may not necessarily be able to verbalize what's going on, or may not be ready to have those serious conversations, at least providing them with a community to grow with, so when they get to those years, because I think it's probably around like 4th or 5th grade, things kind of shift. Kids, they may have an experience, but they may not really know how to understand it. But then, like, I think 4th and 5th grade kids start to say things, and conversations happen, and it's like it's a shift. It's almost like it takes away their innocence as kids, because they have to start dealing with these issues of race, or because I don't look like my classmate, I'm being called this name, or like you said, somebody wants to touch my hair, or I'm questioned about X, Y, and Z. So we really want them to start forming those relationships early on, so that they, I'm hopeful that they'll have these relationships, throughout at least their schooling, if not beyond. But definitely so they can build that relationship and trust with one another, so that when it's time to talk about important and pertinent issues, they know I have this comfortable space, and I have this friend that I've known since I was like in second or third grade.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And also I think, for, like you said, those younger kids having that, even like having books or, things they can kind of relate to, or just like you said, talking about those historical figures that aren't often mentioned, in the classroom,
Hmm.
and having that representation again, that we don't always see in the media that's positive, is
Hmm.
just so important and influential, especially for the younger kids. And I think when I was coming up, I read like The Skin I'm In, by
Hmm.
Sharon G. Blake, and that was one of the ones that that resonated with me, and I enjoyed reading that. But whenever I see a book with a person of color on it, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like someone who looks like me, and that it gets me
Right.
excited. So I think
Absolutely.
having that representation, and then later on being able to build those conversations, or even with the young or the older, older kids, and teenagers as well, like having those conversations around, microaggressions and racism and colorism and body image,
Hmm.
and understanding their Black identity, or their mixed identity. There's a
Hmm.
lot that goes into that, and so it's so important to be able to have those inclusive, open, diverse spaces like you talked about.
Yep.
And I'm glad that, you're still able to do that in the midst of everything going on with the pandemic, and it's still able to come together in these virtual spaces, and still have parents driving, like you said, those far distances, 30 minutes or so at a time, to just make sure
Hmm.
that that conversation is being had is so
Yep.
important.
Thank you. Yep, it is. Truly. Yep,
Yeah.
truly. So
Yeah.
some
So,
good things have been happening. I'm excited.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm excited for you, and I commend you for everything you do, and I respect all the work that you've done. It's so
Thank you.
much.
Hmm. Thank
And
you.
I think the last thing is just, because I know you have more events and more discussions coming up, if you wanted to talk about any of those or anything else you wanted to add.
Sure. So we are in the process of planning what I'm calling like a summer series of events. So just continuing to give the girls opportunities to bond with one another. We have also been so lucky to find young college women or young adults who it's personal for them. They've either grown up in the area or have been uh, lucky enough to have mentors and things of that nature in their lives, so they want to give back their time, and they volunteer and they work with the participants. So this summer we are going to be doing activities such as learning how to garden. Um, we've been fortunate enough to have the UW Extension here in the Wisconsin area reach out to us to offer us a garden plot so that we can learn to plant our own vegetables and fruits and things. So we'll be working on that this summer, learning how to garden. We'll also have the opportunity to learn how to make soaps and oils. We'll have an opportunity to go and also do fun things, get mani pedis, and then have a tour of one of the local beauty school academies here, um, dance, and just other things that we're planning so that they can bond, like I said, with one another and their leaders.
Mhm.
Because in the fall, when school is back in session, that's really when we're going to start working on our curriculum based around self-esteem, self-care, social media, relationships, and that sort of thing. But I wanted them to really focus on spending time getting to know one another, building that rapport, and feeling that they can trust one another. This is a safe space so that when we do shift and start talking about some personal things, they feel comfortable. They feel like this is my family, and I feel comfortable with sharing. So, we really are working towards just trying to get to know one another, and especially, since we've been in a time of isolation and being on the virtual world. So trying to get them to reconnect with one another and have that face-to-face interaction as safely as possible and build these relationships.
Yes, that is amazing. That sounds like a really fun time for, I think, the summer. It's going to be really great to have those activities, like you said, and events coming up. And I cannot stress enough how important, it's something I talk about on my blog, how important self-care is. And
Absolutely.
yes, that
Hmm.
is a big one. Just
Right.
being able to, love yourself and express, uh, kind of those affirmations to yourself and build,
Hmm.
build your confidence is just, and like such an enriching experience. And so I definitely support everything you're doing. And I hope I can kind of I want to keep up with that as well, in my
Oh,
own personal.
absolutely. Yep. That would be great.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be posting different things on our social media platforms. The dates of our events are on our website, so we'll be updating those, as we get things planned and solidified. But yep, absolutely.
Okay, yes, and so the information will be on your website. That's
Yep.
Lovin My Skin, WI,
WI.com. Yep.
Wisconsin. Mhm.
Hmm.
Yes, that'll be great. Yes, and I wanted to say thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I really appreciated like all the information that you shared. I think that it'll be very helpful for others who are listening and watching to, know that there are, communities out there, women, and are trying to empower young girls and uplift them and instill, a lot of these traits that you talked about, having that self-confidence, self-esteem, and perpetuating that forward. And hopefully, it will encourage and influence more people to step forward and be that mentor and be that leader in their communities, and kind of help to see that grow as well and expand, because it is such a beautiful thing, to just be able to have that empowerment. So I appreciate you talking about that today.
Thanks so
And
much. I appreciate you reaching out.
yes, yes. So